Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we highlight the players you need to know about on game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. So this first news story is concerning Byron Maxwell and the whole situation of him getting benched. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. 1 year ago, almost to the day, the Dolphins demoted starting cornerback Byron Maxwell. Today, after starting Miami's first two games of the 2017 regular season, Maxwell has again been relegated to the bench. As ESPN's Adam Schefter tweets, in fact, Maxwell has been deactivated for the team's London matchup. Obviously, we know that it already happened against New Orleans. Though that's because he tweaked his hamstring in warm-ups. Schefter says that Maxwell would have been active today, but for the hamstring issue. So he would still have been active if it wasn't for the hamstring. Maxwell has disappointed since leaving Seattle as a free agent after the 2014 season and signing a 6-year, $63 million contract with Philadelphia after the 6'1", 203-pounder didn't give up his deal with the Eagles in 2015. They elected last offseason to send him and linebacker Kiko Alonso and the 13th pick for the 2016 draft to Miami for the 8th overall selection in that draft. Despite the 2016 demotion, Maxwell did end up starting 13 games for the Fins last year and posted a pair of interceptions for the third consecutive season, in fact. He played pretty well after his demotion, so perhaps the Dolphins are hoping for perhaps the Dolphins are hoping for the same sort of spark this year. Maxwell currently grades out as Pro Football Focus's 13th worst corner out of 109 eligible players. Rookie Cordrea Tankersley will get the start in Maxwell's place. Tankersley, whom the Dolphins selected in the third round of this year's draft, was inactive for the club's first two games this season. But Miami is hoping he can become a fixture in its defensive backfield sooner rather than later. The Dolphins can release Maxwell after this season without absorbing any dead money, and they almost certainly will not bring him back on his current deal. So that's what's going on with Byron Maxwell. It pretty much breaks down the situation as thoroughly as humanly possible. He has not been playing well, and some of it is effort. I mean, we saw some of that in the preseason. It's carried over into the regular season. You always kind of get the feeling that Byron Maxwell is a tough guy. He seems like a tough guy to coach. He is as veteran gets. It sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes he kind of questions his dedication to the craft at times and his effort on certain plays. Obviously, when he got benched, I think that was a wake-up call that kind of behavior is unacceptable. And if you want to play football, you're going to have to play it the right way. And that message was sent to him last year. Hopefully, I don't know why it had to be sent to him again. Maybe he thought that Adam wouldn't pull the trigger this year. Maybe he thought that we were a little bit more thin than last year at corner. We don't have Tony Lippett. So maybe that's what he thought. I don't know. But we'll see. I think hopefully this... it would be really funny if he got benched again and came back and performed the way he did last year. It would be pretty hilarious. But right now, Cordrea Tankersley is balling out for us, which is great. He had a great game against the Saints, against a high-powered, high-octane offense. And his first day as an NFL cornerback in the regular season that was really, really nice to see. And I think he's going to really help out the secondary. Now we just need Cordrea, and we obviously Xavier needs to step up his play as well. So we'll see. I'm hoping for the best here. I think hopefully, because Byron's a good corner, and he obviously adds depth. So hopefully this gets him wanting to get back onto the football field. We'll see though. So this is concerning Mike Pouncey's hip. Mike Pouncey has played in each of the Dolphins' 3 games this season after missing 11 2016 contests, but he gave a sobering glimpse into his NFL future with the hip injury he suffered last season. Looking at a seminal setback, the perennial Pro Bowler said the length of his career will be determined by how his hip holds up, adding that he will need hip replacement surgery in the next 5 to 10 years. My hip always feels tight. I don't have a normal hip, Pouncey said via Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald. He said, quote, "We'll see. I can't predict the future. I'm listening to a doctor tell me I feel right now I don't need a replacement, but we'll see. The process would end Pouncey's career, but for now, the 28-year-old blocker continues to anchor the Miami Dolphins offensive line. He spent the offseason recovering from the hip and continues to operate on a partial practice schedule, taking Thursdays off, a pattern Pouncey sees continuing for the foreseeable future. The 7th-year player is signed through the 2020 season. So, yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, Mike Pouncey obviously has had a long career here in Miami. He's a great Dolphin. His prime years, his best years, were some of the best years that we've seen from a Dolphins offensive lineman. He's a great player, and it sucks that injuries really hurt him and his brother. Really hurt their careers, and it's really unfortunate because he's a great player, and he obviously is a great leader, and it really is unfortunate. All right, this next news story: Jordan Lucas is promoted after Eric Smith is placed on IR. This comes from the Daily Dolphin. The Miami Dolphins made a roster move on Tuesday, bringing cornerback Jordan Lucas up to the active roster from the practice squad. They made roster space by placing rookie tackle Eric Smith on injured reserve, effectively ending his season. Lucas played in 8 games for the Dolphins last year as a special team member. He is converting from safety to cornerback this season. The Dolphins made the move as they look to add depth at the cornerback position. Byron Maxwell missed the last week's game after sustaining an injury in pregame warmups. Smith made the roster as an undrafted free agent after a strong training camp in preseason. He was expected to provide depth at the tackle position this year, but an ailing knee has made him inactive for each of the team's first 3 games. He likely will require surgery to clean up this issue. The Dolphins will face the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, the first game in Hard Rock Stadium this season. So this is an interesting move by the Dolphins. I would have loved for Torrey McTyer to be activated to the roster. I think he had a tremendous preseason. He was a lockdown corner, to say the least. And I was really impressed when the ball was in the air, his ball skills. On special teams, in terms of a returner, he looked unnatural. He muffed a lot of balls there. But other than that, he looked really good at the cornerback position, and he looked good as a gunner as well. So, interesting move that the Dolphins went with Jordan Lucas, probably because he has more experience than the undrafted rookie out of UNLV. But we'll see. I would have rather had Torrey McTyer than who am I thinking of? Jordan Lucas, but I've always liked Jordan Lucas ever since we drafted him out of Penn State. I always thought he was going to be a good safety. I thought he was going to be a good free safety. He's built like he's a smart guy, but obviously converting him to corner, we'll see. And Jordan Lucas is a good gunner, so he'll add depth, and he'll provide some good special teams play as well. All right, so let's go into the next news story. So this is not really, this isn't really news, but I guess it's something. I haven't really read this yet. It says, amid terrible start, Dolphins have made subtle changes. This seems to be more opinion-based than actual news, but this report comes from Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. Until Ted Larson is healthy and comes off the short-term IR in another month or so, the offensive line looks like it's going to stay status quo, barring injury. The starting receiver set of Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, and Leonte Crew and Jakeem Grant are not going to force them out of the top 3 or to the bench. Meanwhile, Gase put a lot of personnel capital into vouching for tight end Julius Thomas, who hasn't really turned into a consistent difference maker yet, and Anthony Fasano is still mostly in his expected role as a blocking tight end. So big lineup changes looming, hard to fathom. The old we lost, so we're going to cut somebody threat that seemed to be genuinely shocked the locker room late last October doesn't really exist now. Because this lineup was the one Gase wanted and rode last year, and it seems he's going to continue riding it for the near future because he said, quote, "It's not time to panic." But that doesn't mean the Dolphins didn't make some adjustments to other elements of the offense last Sunday without much success. Nobody seemed to notice, but the no huddle went out the window. We all noticed that, and that's been obviously a big complaint of Dolphins fans. And it's been a big complaint to me because I thought that was an added dimension to the offense going into the season. So let's read on. Nobody seemed to notice the no huddle went out the window. It was a part of the offense the first 2 games. It's supposed to be part of the attack this year with a veteran quarterback and a veteran lineup that knows what to do. I don't think it was really a part of the attack of the Jets game. That game was so out of whack in terms of rhythm and what the offense was trying to accomplish in terms of a game plan, that the no huddle was basically non-existent in that game. So yeah. Where were we? But it was the first casualty when coaches realized players who were supposed to know what to do, not in the lineup. No, they basically saying that they stopped the no huddle to dumb down the offense. But it was the first. Hang on, we just read that. And so Gase, the team's play caller and architect of the offense, decided he'd do something he did last year. He let the team huddle before every play so the guys could compose themselves. Maybe taking a huddle break would help players think about what they wanted to do a bit better. Gase tried to make it easier for them. That right there. How stupid does that sound? Maybe taking a huddle break would help players think about what they wanted to do a bit better. I'm not saying Armando is stupid for saying that. I'm just saying, if that is the case, why we stopped the no huddle. That doesn't. What you think we're gonna sit here and stop and talk about it? You guys are gonna do it better? That doesn't make any sense. You guys have been practicing this for months on end. That's why there's a training camp. If you guys don't get it now, you're never gonna get it. This is the second year in this offense. That is not an excuse at all. Either the coaches aren't doing a good enough job of teaching the players, or the players are just not paying attention. So Gase tried to make it easier for players, but by the way, this is something of a surrender because it tells me players in the second year of this offense have failed to progress to the point where they can run the offense beyond its rudimentary levels. Last year, Gase went so far as to cut but options on routes for receivers so they didn't have to make decisions. Option routes for receivers so they didn't have to make decisions. I could understand that in the first year of an offense that you wouldn't have option routes, which is a very popular thing nowadays in the NFL. It seems to me like we're talking about this is like an elementary football team that doesn't understand football. Option routes literally most of the time can be 1 or 2 things. So for an NFL player cannot really understand an option route and can't run it correctly, that is insane. So again, this is ridiculous. Last year, Gase went to so far. Okay, we know that cut out the option routes for receivers, so they didn't have to make decisions on the field and could instead play faster. I imagine those options remain out because these guys haven't shown they're ready to get past. They're not ready to get past algebra. Another adjustment Gase tried on Sunday was to actually try to involve Kenyon Drake more in the offense. I like the idea, not that it has. Let's see here. Another adjustment Gase tried on Sunday was actually try to involve Kenyon Drake more in the offense. I like the idea, not that it has worked yet because it hasn't, but I have this. I like the idea in principle. The idea is that Ajayi cannot get 28 carries a game as he did the first game. He also shouldn't be getting 23 carries per 2 games as he has the past 2 weeks. Okay, so Kenyon Drake did not get, like he's saying it hasn't worked yet. The man had, he got, like 2 touches in the Saints game? The man's probably saw the field all of 5 times in that Saints game. So, to say it hasn't worked yet is a little ridiculous. Kenyon Drake hasn't saw the field at all. So, he needs to see the field more, obviously. And not only him, but Jakeem Grant as well. The idea, okay, so we read that. The Dolphins should be giving Ajayi the ball about 18 to 23 times a game. That feels like a really good goal. And the window would leave maybe 8 to 12 carries for somebody else. It would be nice if Drake and Damien Williams could fill out those carries and touches, but they didn't the first 2 games. That changed a bit. This last game, Drake got only 1 carry, but he participated in 9 offensive plays and caught 2 passes. Okay, so. Now again, he needs to get on the field more. The vision, I think he only caught 2 passes. He was on the field 9 times. No, I think it's to get Drake, who runs a 4.3 in the 40-yard dash, a handful of chances to make a big play in space. Get him the ball on a toss and see if he can't get outside. Throw him a screen and see if he can't make somebody miss. Use him a bit like the Saints are using Alvin Kamara. So why hasn't that happened more often? Well, the Dolphins have plays they'd like Drake to run, but he was too often improvising when the play doesn't unfold exactly as drawn up. And sometimes that's improvising worked, and sometimes it didn't. The point is the team is having a hard time using one of its weapons and high draft picks for 2016. It's also having a hard time figuring out the sweet spot for using Ajayi. It's also having a hard time staying on the field, which is another reason the no-huddle offense was abandoned. I could see that I could understand that time of possession has been an issue for this team, and it has. And when you're going no-huddle offense, you do want to flow, and if you're not getting first downs, there's no reason to use a no-huddle offense, because if a no-huddle offense, you're going as quick as you possibly can. If you're not getting first downs, then you're going to be literally on the football field for 2 seconds. So that makes sense. That is a good reason. That should be the reason why we're not running the no-huddle offense, not because the players don't understand how to run a no-huddle offense and they can't utilize the small details of this offense. And the fact that if that is the reason they're not running the no-huddle offense, is they don't fully understand this offense the second year in, and most of the players that are on this offense have been in this offense for 2 years now, then that is unacceptable. But that makes more sense. And using the sweet spot for Ajayi. I think we've been doing mostly the same thing. Again, I think it's repetitive. I think it's the same thing we were doing last year, and teams are game planning for that. We just have not switched it up enough. We're so predictable. I think we just need to be more creative there. So staying out there longer by huddling takes more time off the clock, so you're resting the defense a tiny bit more. Yeah, exactly, a tiny bit more. Even though, off the clock, so you're resting the defense a tiny bit more, even though the offense isn't moving. My expectation is Gase will change something again this week for Tennessee. Maybe he'll revamp the lineup. Probably not. Here's the deal. Here's my opinion on this. He doesn't need to put somebody else into the football game. He doesn't need to do that. He needs to figure out a way to use. Now, that doesn't. I'm not saying what I meant by that. He doesn't need to bench anybody for somebody else. He does need to utilize his personnel better in terms of mixing in Kenyon Drake, mixing in Jakeem Grant, mixing in Leonte Carew. When you can. Mixing in Damian Williams. Use these players that were, especially Damian Williams, who was a huge part of last year. Making plays. The amount of run after catch yards this man had was insane. So again, my opinion on this: he doesn't need to bench anybody. He doesn't need to cut anybody. He needs to figure out how to be less. Listen, if you watch Adam Gase's offense in Chicago and Denver, there were so many looks that you got on from the defensive side of you. You couldn't just game plan for one thing. Right now, we are so predictable. We line up under center. We run this outside zone constantly. If you watch in Denver and you watch in Chicago, they lined up under center. They lined in the shotgun. They lined up 3 wide. 3 to the right, 1 to the left. So many different formations. So we need to get back to that as in this offense. Now, if they can't do that because this offense doesn't fully understand it, which is ridiculous. Again, Clyde Christensen comes from when the Colts are running that no-huddle offense with Dallas Clark and Reggie Wayne. And sometimes, again, they didn't always run that no-huddle offense. And how dominant they were. They didn't constantly line up under center. They would go from shotgun to under center to confuse the defense. Just add variety in terms of formations into the game plan, for God's sakes. It just needs to be more creative and less predictable. Get away from what worked last year, because obviously teams, have either figured out the formula, so to speak, or it just. I think that's what it is. Teams are like I said in that Saints game, the way those linebackers were shooting the gaps. They didn't respect the pass at all. They knew we weren't going to pass the football. And it's hard to block, more people than you. It's hard to block more people than you have. The box was obviously loaded. The linebackers are shooting the gaps. Obviously, somebody's going to come free in a hole. So teams need to respect our passing game more. And if we give them different looks on defense instead of the same thing each and every single week, then I think the offense is going to thrive a whole lot more. So hopefully that's what we do. It just throw some more variety in there, for God's sakes. And I don't think anybody needs to be benched. I think we just need to be less predictable on offense. Not to say, Adam Gase always talks about how he wants to run this team. He's talked about it in the past. He wants to take that kind of consistency from the Patriots, right? The Patriots, what they do so well, one of the bigger reasons why they're so consistent is because they don't game plan they game plan to what the weaknesses of the defense they're playing is. So one game they'll go completely empty the entire game. How many times have we seen that? They did that against the Saints this year. They did that against the Bills last year. If you can't stop the pass, they're going to pass it. If you're a team that struggles against the run, they're going to line up in the I formation and pound it down your throat. That's what they did against the Carolina Panthers. That's exactly what they did. They saw something on tape that the Saints did well, so they utilized that against the Panthers. We need to do more of that. We need to look at a defense and say, okay, this is what they're not good at. This is what we're going to do to attack that. Instead of, okay, we're a good running football team. Our identity is Jay Ajayi. We're going to line up under center, and we're going to pound the rock. And so, again, that's a very single-minded way of going into a football game. So if you go into a game with that mentality and it's not working, then what is it that you're going to fall back on that you've been practicing all week? So I think that's what we need to do, is just be more smart with our game plans. All right, so let's get into the AFC East. So last week we didn't do the AFC East news you need to know about. We just previewed what's really going on in the AFC East. We looked at each and every team and their talent and where they are. So obviously we'll start with this. The Patriots are the worst defense in the NFL as of right now, which is pretty funny considering all the the hype that was going into this year with that defense, especially the secondary. You have Malcolm Butler and you have Stephon Gilmore and Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung back there and Eric Rowe. And a lot of people had high expectations for them. So I watched that entire Panthers game with my brother. He's a huge Panthers fan, so I watched that game. So one of the things that I've noticed watching a lot of Patriots this year is Malcolm Butler is having a bad year. He could not guard Devin Funchess at all in that Panthers game. He's having a very, very bad year. Very, very bad year. Stephon Gilmore is struggling in terms of he's really struggling getting his hands out. He's been called for a ton of pass interference, but he's not struggling as bad as Malcolm Butler is. Malcolm Butler is struggling. So I mean, there was a couple times they just busted coverages. It was Malcolm Butler's fault. So that secondary, there's one very key member of that secondary that is struggling. I think their defensive front is very weak in terms of their defensive line. I don't think. Obviously, they have Trey Flowers on it, who they hope he's by far their best defensive lineman in terms of a pass rusher. They don't really have a pass rusher. They don't have a lot of speed, and they don't have players that could set the edge like a Rob Ninkovich did in years past. So you see teams really trying to outflank them a lot, and it's very successful so far. And it's really weird because you don't see defenses being outflanked as much as you have in the past because of the speed of NFL defenses nowadays. You really can't outflank a defense. Your offensive line just cannot get the edge on some of these NFL defenses nowadays. But on the Patriots, you can. They're very, very meat and potatoes in the middle with Alan Branch and Malcolm Brown. And on the outside, they really don't have a lot of athleticism. Dante Hightower, he's a great run defender. He's a very physical player, but he's not very athletic at all. And, I mean, the man's never had an interception in his career. He gets taken out in obvious passing downs for a reason. And Kyle Van Noy is not having a great season as well. I think it's a mixture of their defensive line isn't as talented. Their linebackers are definitely not as talented. They lost David Harris in that Panthers game, and it really showed. They just don't have as much depth on that defense up front than they did in years past, and they don't have as much versatility as well. And Malcolm Butler is really struggling for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how bad they play against the Buccaneers. Because Mike Evans, obviously that offense is on fire right now. They played really well against a really good Giants team on defense. Not on offense, but on defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots play them. Because the Panthers, the Panthers have a very, very good running game. Their passing game, they're missing Greg Olsen. So they're missing a lot of weapons on the outside. They have Kelvin Benjamin and Devin Funchess, and they were able to take advantage of a secondary. Their first drive, the Panthers came out passing it. They weren't really trying to run the football. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they do against a more talented receiver group for the Buccaneers with Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans, with Humphreys in the slot, O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate at tight end. You're going to be interested to see what Bill Belichick does. I mean, I don't doubt Bill Belichick. He's the hoodied god, for God's sake. So that's going to be an interesting game. I'm not going to pick who I think is going to win that game. I don't know if the Patriots I don't know if they're at home. But let's see here. Are they at home? Raymond James Stadium team. No, they are not at home. I'm not gonna pick a winner there. I would think the Patriots are gonna win, because I think Jameis Winston. It'll be interesting to see if he can't play mistake-free football, which Cam Newton didn't. He threw a pick early on in that game. They still won, so we'll see. I'm really interested to see what that Patriots defense does against a very, very, very good Buccaneers offense. All right, let's move on to who the Bills have the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, let me talk about the Bills for a second because I think people need to hit the brakes for 2 seconds. I've watched a lot of Bills games as well, a lot of Jets games as well. I've watched a ton of games. I watch almost every game every Sunday. So, the Bills obviously they upset the Falcons last week. Or this past Sunday, and obviously I think it's so overblown. You see these headlines: Bills defense shuts down Atlanta offense and all this other stuff. The Atlanta Falcons offense lost Julio Jones early in that game and Mohamed Sanu. So if you're not familiar with Mohamed Sanu, he's a very good receiver. He's a very big part of their offense, and obviously everybody knows who Julio Jones is. So losing their 2 best playmakers in the passing game. Yeah, I think it would be easier to shut down their offense after that. Obviously, the running game is still... They were able to run the football, though, on them. If it wasn't for turnovers, and really dumb turnovers, by the way, then they would have easily won that game. If it wasn't for injuries as well. So, we'll see. I am not drinking the Kool-Aid that is the Buffalo Bills right now, at all. I think they got a big break in that game. The most impressive game that they've won was that Denver Broncos game, and they won that off of Trevor Siemian playing like a hot trash. So, Tyrod Taylor has really surprised me in terms of his ability to play under center, the amount that he has. So I'll say that is the only thing that's really surprised me. Obviously, Leslie Frazier is doing a good job for what he has on defense right now. Their pass rush is good, I'll say that. The secondary with Micah Hyde, he's playing very well. But I think I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid at all. I don't think this Bills team is as good as people are saying, just from what I've seen. Again, when you lose Mohamed Sanu and Julio Jones, they were not able to stop the run with Telvin Coleman and Devontae Freeman at all in that game. Matt Ryan had a bad game because he lost some of his playmakers in the passing game. And as a secondary, you're less scared when the two of them, two monsters, especially Julio Jones. Even if Mohamed Sanu was still in there, if Julio's out, that takes at least you don't have to put a safety over the top of Julio every single play. So there's more people of coverage for other people. It's a whole thing. And they rushed, like, what Leslie's been doing for their defense is he's rushed 4 or 3 and then just dropped everybody else back. So that's the reason, again, another big reason they've been able to run the football on them. But we'll see. I don't think that defense is that good. I think their secondary is bad, other than Micah Hyde. And their front seven is, obviously with Preston Brown and Kyle Williams and Jerry Hughes it's a talent, and obviously Shaq Lawson from Clemson it's a talented front seven, but the back end I still have question marks for. Tre'Davious White, their rookie, obviously he's had a decent year. I would say decent is almost overblowing it a little bit, but I'm not drinking the Bills Kool-Aid. Anyway, they play the Bengals. It's going to be very hard for the Bengals to win that game because their offensive line is so bad. It's very, very bad. And the front, like I said, they have some very talented pass rushers on that Bills team. So if that's not a good recipe. But their secondary could be taken advantage of if AJ is healthy and John Ross plays a little bit more than he has. With some of the talent they have, when Joe Mixon can get involved in the pass game a little bit, I think the Bengals can score some points if they get time. They got to get the ball out of their hands quick. So, yeah, the Jets, that's going to be, I don't know. Let me see if that's at home or away. I like the Bengals to at least be competitive in that game if it's at home, if Cincinnati's playing at home. Let me see here. Yep, it's going to be at Cincinnati. So that's going to be a tough game. It's not going to be an easy game, I will say, for the Bills to win, and I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive if they're not playing at Ralph Wilson Stadium, and they're not, so that's nice. So the Jets are playing the Browns. Okay, so this is a whole thing. This is an ordeal. Obviously, the Jets go on the road and win in overtime against the Jacksonville Jaguars that have a very talented football team. If it wasn't for a penalty on a screen that was really stupid by, I think, of either a rookie or a young player for the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose name's escaping me right now, but I'm sure some of you guys know. So the penalty, Leonard Fournette catches a screen, he walks into the end zone with like 60 seconds left in the game, or just a little over a minute. They called it back because of a holding call, or a block in the back on their offense. Overall, I think for the Jets playing the Jaguars, it was a good matchup for their defense, knowing that Blake Bortles is a terrible quarterback and that they're going to really try to pound the rock the entire game, and try to get Leonard Fournette involved as much as they can. And they did a good job of doing that. Like I said, if it wasn't for a penalty call, they win that game. But it was a bad matchup for the Jaguars. They really tried to bang their head against the wall, kind of like we did with the running game, and it just didn't work. They had zero faith in Blake Bortles. They did not put the ball in Blake Bortles' hands to win them that football game, especially at the end and towards the end there and at overtime. So I am not drinking the Jets Kool-Aid. They're what? I think they're 2-2 now. I think their secondary is so bad. I don't understand why if you just spread that team out and really just go after him, because Leonard Fournette and Muhammad Wilkerson, other than Leonard Williams and Muhammad Wilkerson, Muhammad's a better pass rusher than Leonard is. But other than that, they really don't have a ton of pass rushers. They have, I think if you just spread them out and pass, I mean, they have Jamal Adams is having a good year, but again, another head scratcher there. It's been a weird first few weeks of the NFL. And they play the Browns. The Cleveland Browns, man. They've really. I'm not gonna say disappointed me, but I feel like they have some young talent on that football team. Deshaun Kaiser's playing well. Their offensive line is not bad. It's actually pretty good with some of the additions they made in the offseason. They got a good backfield with Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson. They have the receiver core is a little eh. They have Kenny Britt, Corey Coleman. So their defense is much improved. The Jabril Peppers. They lost Joe Hayden. They have Calhoun back there, who had a good year last year. Who's having a decent year so far. They got a good front with Christian Kirksey, Danny Shelton in the middle, with Myles Garrett rushing the passer. So I think that's going to be a very competitive game, and I think that game is going to come down to who turns the ball over more. If the Jets have 2 turnovers and the Browns have 0, I like the Browns in that game. All right, so that's basically the state of the AFC East. I think right now, and obviously we're in the cellar right now. I think right now it's anybody's it's not anybody's game, but it's definitely closer than I think a lot of people thought it would be. So I think it's pretty claustrophobic right now. I think we have a chance if we go on a run for the rest of October to really either take second place for the foreseeable future or for the rest of the year until we hit December and really stamp it in there. So yeah, I think that's a good thing that it's pretty close right now in terms of. I think the Bills, again, I'm not drinking the Bills Kool-Aid, and I think it's as close as it is with the Patriots or with the Pats right now. It's a good thing for us. So that's a good thing at least, All right, so we're gonna headline the players you need to know about on game day. So we're going up against the Tennessee Titans, who absolutely whooped us last year. Obviously, that was the last game for Dallas Thomas and Billy Turner. I heard some light clapping in the background. That obviously needed to happen. Brian Arakpo, Jarrell Casey, Derek Morgan, they had a field day with us in that game because of our offensive line woes. And it was pretty close for I would say, a little bit into the third quarter. Then the Titans really started to score and pull away. Obviously, Jakeem Grant had a punt return in that game. That kind of kept it close. It tied it at 7 for a while there. But we weren't able to stop their running game. And I think the players you need to highlight is, I think I've said this every week, but the defense hasn't been the problem for this team. It's the offense. So we're gonna talk lightly about the defense. Is the defensive line. The defensive line, I think if Mike Mularkey goes into this game with a game plan a similar game plan that he had going into last year's game, then it's not going to be good for him, because I think our front seven is so much improved from last year in terms of a run defense, with William Hayes doing a great job in the running game. And and Charles Harris really providing that depth that we need there. Same thing with Will Hayes. And Devon Gottschall, Vincent Taylor. Hopefully Jordan Phillips can come back off this ankle injury that he's suffered the last 2 weeks. He hasn't been able to play. When he's in the game, he's been very good, which is a good thing. I think this, rotation that we have going on with the defensive tackles has really helped him out. And obviously the way Sue's playing right now, I really don't think, if they go into this game thinking, okay, we're going to pound the rock, because I don't know if Marcus Mariota is going to play, so we're not going to even talk about that, but if they go into this game, they would do this anyway if they had Marcus or Matt Castle starting. If they went into the game thinking, okay, we can pound the rock against this team, like they did last year, I really don't think it's going to work at all. Obviously, we're going up against a good offensive line with Tyler Lewan, Jake Conklin. They have Ben Jones at center. This is probably the best offensive line that we've played this year. Chargers, definitely better than them, definitely better than the Jets, and definitely better than the Saints with, Zach Strief and, Teron Armstead. Zach played for most of that game, but really, I think that offensive line is better than those. So it's going to be the biggest test the defensive line has had. Obviously, there's been huge improvements in the linebacker room with Lawrence Timmons. Kiko Alonso moved to the outside. He's been playing very well. Despite what Pro Football Focus says, I think Kiko Alonso has been pretty good. And Chase Allen has provided a really good presence in the tackle box as well. So has Lawrence Timmons. So this game, our team is so much different than it was last year in terms of a run defense that I just don't think they could come in with that same mentality that we're going to really run them over like they did last year. The only thing that I'm worried about is their tight ends over the middle with Delaney Walker. If we can really just cover and tighten up, that should be the number one thing that we go into this game thinking, listen, they're going to try to attack us over the middle with their tight ends, just like they did last year, especially off of play action. We just need to do a better job of tightening coverage in the middle of the football field, which we really haven't done a good job of this year. So if we can do that, that's the only thing I'm really worried about on defense. I trust our corners against their receivers. They have Corey Davis now, Eric Decker, and I'm forgetting somebody, obviously, obviously Rashawn Matthews. But I think I like our corners in this game. They don't really line up in a lot of empty sets. Unless it's really a 3rd and long with Marcus Mariota, they don't line up. They don't really like to pass the football. They're running first. They're a run-first football team. That's, the way of Mike Mularkey. So I like our defensive matchup in this game. Obviously, this is the best offensive line that we're going to face. This is the best running game that we have faced this year. So I think this is going to be a good test for the run defense. But I think we're so much improved in that area of our game that it's not going to work as well as it did last year. So I think I like our matchup in terms of a defensive standpoint. Now, from an offensive standpoint, as long as everybody's healthy going into this game, the offensive line, we have a better offensive line than we did last year. Jarrell Casey has he's been like a bad omen for our offense. Same thing with Brian Arakpo and Derek Morgan. If you take that game away that they had against us, that like literally knocks off half of their sacks last year. I think it knocks off a lot of their sacks last year. So, hopefully, as long as they stand up and do a good job at the passing game in terms of pass protecting, I think we'll be fine. But I think we need to get favorable down and distance. If we get 3rd and 13, if we average 3rd and 10 plus this game, we're going to lose because we're not going to be able to score. Because their pass rushes, especially with Dick LeBeau, it's going to be tough. And, they've improved their secondary with Adoree Jackson, and they signed Jonathan Cyprien from Jacksonville. So it's going to be tough to convert 3rd and 10. Against any football team it is, but especially Dick LeBeau, who's not an idiot like Dennis Allen was. And we couldn't score against the Dennis Allen defense, for God's sake. So you think we're going to be able to score against a Dick LeBeau ran defense with some of the talent that they have? It's not going to happen if we average 3rd and 10 plus. So we have to get favorable down and distance. To highlight some of the players on the offense that need to have a good game. Laramie and Juwan, I'm not worried about because he's had a great year so far. But Laramie and Jermon Bushraw need to have a better game than they've given us the last 3 games. Jermon's caused a lot of penalties. Same thing with Laramie. They've accounted for most of the penalties that we've been called for. They need to do a better job in their technique. They need to do a better job just in general of blocking. So those 2 players definitely highlight on the offensive line. I think Jay Cutler, if he gets time, and if we push the ball down the field, and the secondary is not that great for the Titans. With obviously they added Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson. It's not the greatest secondary in the world for the Titans. And I think the Titans know that, and they're a very blitz-heavy team. I think we can catch them in some things. And Jay Cutler is he's a vet quarterback. If you give him time, to read the defense, I like our matchup there. So I think the receivers and tight ends can get involved in this game. And I think the running game can really get involved in this game. I can't remember where the Titans rank in terms of a defense in the run game, but they just let up 57 points to the Texans and a rookie quarterback. And we have a lot of talent on this offense, so we need to get in the end zone. This is obviously our first game at Hard Rock. I think if Laramie and Jermon can clean up some of the mental errors that they've committed, give Jay Cutler really time to read the defense. If we come in with a different game plan than we have in weeks past, then I think I like our chances in this game. Hopefully, here's what I hope happens from an offensive standpoint. I hope we go into this game with give them different looks on defense, line up with 2 back sets, just do something different on the offense. And I swear to God, if we run Wildcat, I'll throw a shoe at my screen. That's not going to help anything. We just said not to be predictable and not let their linebackers shoot the gaps against this offensive line. What do you think they're going to do in the Wildcat? So, just show more variety in terms of an offense. Open it up a little bit more in the passing game. Push it down the field. And if you are going to run the quick passing game, stop running screens. Just run shallow crosses and quick slants and stuff of that nature, stick routes, stuff of that nature. Don't stop running screens. If we do some of those things, show them a different game plan. I like this offense, and especially how smart Adam Gase is. If we really give them different looks early on and it's effective, look for us to kind of go back to that outside zone under center type stuff and look for us to really dominate late in the game in the running game. If we go out with a new look type of a game plan, and it's really effective, look for if we can fall back on some of that running. Some of those running plays and take advantage of it. I think we could take advantage of it pretty well. In terms of specific people to watch out for, Adam Gase I think is the guy I'm highlighting this game for sure. I think he just needs to show more. I think he needs to take a page out of Matt Burke's book. What Matt Burke did in that Saints game, hats off to the man. He really made the right adjustments in that game. He hid Mike Holwell. He played more man press. He zone blitzed less, and when he did zone blitz, they were a little bit more simple. He used the right personnel when he zone blitzed as well. I like pulling Andre Branch off of the D-line because he's more of a tweener guy. He's done that before in his career with Gus Bradley, so it was nice to see that. And he utilized his personnel the best he has all year. So hopefully Adam takes a page out of Matt Burke's book and really just utilizes his personnel, give the defense some different looks, sprinkle some more players in there from a personnel standpoint, and I think we'll get a good result. And I think if that happens, if we have success from an offensive standpoint, then we can fall back on some of that stuff that let us go 10-6 last year. All right, let's get into the fan game. We're running a little late here. You guys are going to get upset if I don't answer some of these questions. So, all right, let's get into the fan Q&A. All right, so this first question comes from I think we answered that already. Comes from Boy. He says, "Why won't Gase open up the playbook instead of running these dumb screen plays for 2 yards or -2 yards?" I honestly don't know. I think I think it's a big part of the offense when you look back at how the way he used Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders when he was there in Denver. There was a lot of screens to get them in the open, especially with Wes Welker as well. They ran a lot of screens to get those guys in open space. They executed them way, way, way better than we did. And there was also a threat of other things in that offense. With no Sean Moreno, running the ball and stuff of that nature. So they got soft coverage on the outside because of how prolific their offense was. So that's why it was ran a little bit with higher success there. And when he went to Chicago, they really executed it well there with Joshua Bellamy and Jeremy Langford. So I think it comes down to execution and the personnel that we have on this team, and it doesn't work for this particular team. So let's see here. And the reason, I don't know why I think the reason he ran them is because he's had success in the past with it. This particular team is not. It's just not good. It just can't execute it. Jack Williams says, why would you call that pass play on the 4-yard line instead of letting Ajayi run it in? That would have gotten the crowd crazy and put serious crowd momentum our way. It's pretty sad when the London hype and marketing about the game for the past 2 weeks is more exciting than the actual game. Yeah, you're right. It was tough to watch that game. It wasn't tough to watch the first half because I thought penalties really stood in the way of our offense getting any kind of rhythm. But yeah, that first and goal interception was like, what if a play could really sum up the way our offense is played, it was definitely that one. I mean, when you go back and look at that play, from the terrible route by Julius Thomas, the bad ball placement by Jay Cutler, in terms, again, you could really, it's just how you look at the play. You could either blame it on the bad route and the bad effort by Julius Thomas, or you could say, why didn't Jay Cutler throw it to his back shoulder, or his shoulder, or any kind of back shoulder fade. It was wide open if he did that. Julius Thomas could literally have just turned around and caught the ball. The corner was playing he got pushed right off the line. Julius Thomas could have just literally turned around and caught the touchdown. He also had Jarvis Landry wide open. It was like a fake screen call to the left to really isolate Julius Thomas, but Jarvis was wide open for the touchdown. It was a good call, but it was not executed well. You could have definitely handed it off to JJ, and he would have pounded it in as well. This next question comes from Alex Rivera. Not Alex, Axel Rivera. He says, he says, Skags 1383. Do you think the Dolphins should get an offensive coordinator because Adam Gase is a good coach, but his play calling is questionable? No. I answered that question in the previous video. Ray Gonzalez says, is Gase the problem? Should we sign Kaepernick? No. Gase. I don't think Gase is the problem, and I don't think we should sign Kaepernick. Let's see here. Should Tankersley have a start over him? Yes. Tankersley is thoroughly outplaying anybody in that cornerback room as of right now. This question comes from Fly Solo 420. He says, I woke up at 8 a.m. for this. I know the NFL was disappointed in the game next year. I don't think we would be getting any primetime games. And how are the Rams, Jets, Bills better than us? Even Cleveland has more upside than us. I don't like where the team is heading. We wasted a first-round pick. Where is he? Excuse me, this is crazy. He says first-round pick. Where is he? Why did we draft him in? He's not an every down player. Where Ryan Ramczyk, he looked good, but their hope next year was draft O-line and DBs. All know is we need a lot. All I know is we need a lot. I'm confused. He's mad. That's basically what I got from that. From I probably butchered that, but it was not written well. Sorry, Fly Solo. This comes from your band. He says, will Bobby McKean come back next week? I don't know. I can't remember specifically what injury he suffered, but yes, I think he played the rest of that game, so I would expect him to play next week as well. And he's having a great year at the slot cornerback position. Ira Gay, he says the Bills look scary. Pats looking kind of bad defensively. Hope they get worse. Yeah, I hope they get worse too. And not to wish ill will on anybody, but the Bills looking scary. The Bills do not look scary, man. They definitely do not look scary. Ira Gay says, why are our he says why our receivers can't get separation, and I think we should move Charles Harris to linebacker and Hayes to the inside of DT. What are your thoughts on the idea? No, I don't think Charles Harris is he's doing well where he is, and I think William Hayes is as well. Jacob B says, not blaming Jarvis. Excuse me. He says Jacob. This question comes from Jacob B. He says not blaming Jarvis Landry, but he wants, by the way, $14 to $16 million per year on this offense. The offense stinks. All my fellow Dolph fans are generally stupid, as in they want the sexy choice, i.e., have the wide receivers and all the cool positions. What about the offensive line? Still stinks. Pouncey is gone next year. Good riddance. There's like $10 million off the books. We need to draft a center in the second round and sign or trade for a Pro Bowl left to right guard. If this continues, Landry will be traded before the deadline. I don't think Landry will be traded. We do need I think we need more consistency at that guard position. Jerron Bushrod's he's gonna retire after this year, so there's gonna be 2 guard vacancies there. So the Dolphins are definitely gonna have to do something about that. I think Mac Pouncey is gonna be on this team after this year, for sure. And I think taking a guard in the first 2 rounds is not gonna, for right now, in terms of what I'm seeing in my crystal ball, it's not gonna happen. I would expect in the second round for a quarterback to be selected, or in the third round, a quarterback to be selected. So somewhere around in there. David says, "Is it time for Gase to give up offensive play calling? And has it been very offensive? Perhaps Gase needs to give this up and truly manage all phases." Gase never managed the defense. That was all Vance Joseph. Adam was just basically the force. He was the overseer of. He oversaw things on defense. He made adjustments on defense, but he really let Vance really have the controls on that side, and Adam really focused on the offense. Kind of the same thing this year. I mean, Adam, again, he here and there puts his input on the defense, but Matt Burke is pretty much the overseer there. So I think it's just fun. I think it's good. It's where it needs to be. By the way, what I mean by that quarterback thing, I don't think the Dolphins need a quarterback. I love Tannehill, but they need a backup bad. They need a backup bad. They need somebody that they can groom. The Gamer12345 says, "Do you agree that Sam Darnold is overrated?" He has question marks. I think he's a gunslinger. For sure. He throws the ball. Instead of taking somebody's wide open and dump it down, he likes to throw it up to his playmakers. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Obviously, his numbers are going to be a little bit more skewed because of that. But he needs to learn how to take what the defense is giving to him instead of trying to be less aggressive at times. The Gamer12345 says, "Do you agree with the first round we draft a quarterback, second round we draft an offensive guard?" I wouldn't mind that. I don't think a first round pick needs to be spent on a quarterback, but if that's depending on what happens after the season, we'll see. But I do think a quarterback needs to be drafted at some point. The Gamer12345 says, "Should Dolphins draft Lamar Jackson next year?" I don't like Lamar Jackson. I'm not a fan of his. I don't think he's going to be a franchise quarterback. I don't think, this year he's really pressing to be a pocket passer, and it really hasn't worked for him. He's used his legs less. I don't think he's durable enough to play in the NFL. I really question if he ever will develop into a good pocket passer. And that's something you need to be if you're going to have longevity in this league. The Gamer12345 says, why do the Dolphins suck? I think it's more of a we're getting in the way of ourselves than it is anything else. B. Dennis says, Charles Harris is getting more active as a pass rusher. What's the next step for him as a player? I think the next step for him would be taking more of the slice of a pie in terms of snaps, being more involved in the defense. As of right now, he is really taking advantage of his role. B. Dennis, is it hard to put a finger on why? And yeah, he's playing very well. Is it hard to put a finger on? It's hard to put a finger on why the offense isn't clicking. What's your opinion on the main issue? We talked about that I've been talking everything that I've said. I think we're too predictable on offense. The game plan needs to be more versatile and less predictable. And I think the formation, this is just summing up as quickly as I can. I think formationally, like I said, we need to give the defenses different looks. And I think personnel wise, we need to sprinkle in some of our younger playmakers. B. Dennis says, do you think the Finns will continue to wait until Ted Larson can come off IR or go out as science material? I think they're going to wait until Ted Larson comes off IR. D-Mac, and again, I don't think Ted Larson is that big of an upgrade anyway. D-Mac says, do you think it's time the Dolphins sign a veteran guard to take over for Anthony Steen? It's too late for that. Ian Fun says, why are the Dolphins relying so much on the short passes? Our receivers are not getting open, not enough time to develop deep routes. Is it just all we expect from Gase? A little bit of everything. The quick passing game has always been Adam Gase's forte. Whether he was with Peyton Manning or Jay Cutler in Chicago, Jay Cutler down in Miami, or Ryan Tannehill last year, 2016. The quick pass game has always been a big part of Adam Gase's offense. It's always going to be the soul of it. It's always going to be something that you're going to see probably more than anything else. So that is nothing new. So he says, why are the Dolphins relying so much on the short passes? That's just a big part of his offense, and it always has been with whoever he's coaching. Ian Fun says, what's Tannehill's projected return? Not until 2018. Hey, it's Magnus. He says, do you think Adam Gase will make another drastic change like he did last year? If so, what could it be? You're going to see a lot more. I hope you see more drastic change formationally and the personnel that lines up on that football field on game day. We need to see more misdirection in the backfield with either, get Jakeem Grant involved. At least add him to the formation and to the personnel grouping so there's a threat of something spontaneous happening in this offense, because right now it's more of the same. Jerry X says the defense is not the problem. To hold the Saints at 3 points in the first half is good. What we need from our offense, it took Gase to shake things up last year. It's time for that now. You're absolutely right. The defense is playing really, really, really good right now. Really good football. Horsey Head says, wow, a next terrible loss gets me thinking, was Jay Cutler the right choice only when the game is already out of hand? That he wants to start passing the ball. This is a great example of what Horsey Head is talking about right now. What you saw at the end of garbage time from Jay Cutler, throwing back shoulder fades in the Jets game, really getting out of the pocket, throwing that corner route on the run, letting Devontae Parker go up and get it and make something happen after the catch. That's the way the offense needs to play. Is more not gambling, like taking chances, but pushing the ball down the field early on in the football game. Setting a tone for the defense. I think if we do that, you're gonna get a lighter. You're gonna get a lighter tackle box, and you're gonna get softer coverage. And you make a great point. D-Max says, do you think it's time to get Matt Moore there and see if he can't jumpstart the offense since he is more familiar with the players? And no, I think Matt Moore had a terrible preseason. He had the worst preseason of his career. And I think this offense would still be dead in the mud for the first 3 games if Matt Moore started for the first 3 games. I don't think we would have won that Chargers game if he started, to be honest with you. The way some of the plays that Jay Cutler made with his feet, no way we would have won that with Matt Moore. Dolphins for Life says, he says, why Dolphins so trash? The Dolphins are just getting in the way. They're shooting themselves in the foot. They can't get out of their own way. Martin Bailey says, anyone else completely lost trust in Gase? He's drafted a bunch of players who were ticking time bombs of injuries, and he signed Jay better stand here and get sacked Cutler. And what the heck is the offensive playbook? He's been trying some terrible trick plays and crappy screens every other second like it's Madden. Yeah, the formations, the game plan, everything needs to change, like everything we've been saying, and I don't think Jay Cutler is the issue. T-Zone says, I think Cutler is way over his prime. Okay, I answered that in the last video, T-Zone. Ethan says 5-11 is my prediction for the season. That is ridiculous. We're gonna win more than 5 games. So I just disagree with you on that one. Axel says, what did you think of Tank Grizzly's performance? And again, it's too early to hit the panic button. It's only 3 games. I loved it, Axel. I thought it was a great performance. Axel says, do you think we should start Matt Moore next game? No. Highlight Fence says, what do you like on defense? I love Cordrea, Tank Grizzly. I love the way the defensive line is playing. Gamerific says, why the crap is Jay Cutler starting? Would rather have Brandon Daddy play than poop emoji play. If we don't draft a quarterback, at least second round, I will kill the Dolphins crew office. If you're at that point mentally that you want Brandon Daddy to play, then you need to go see your local therapist, Gamerific, because Brandon Daddy is some hot trash. Madden Gamer says, and I know you're joking around, but I just wanted to, anyway. Madden Gamer says, when McDonald and Timmons come back, our defense might get better by communicating. I think they're really good right now, Madden Gamer. They're doing just fine. Madden Gamer says, I can't wait McDonald to come back, but it'll take more. Yeah, when McDonald comes back, the defense is going to get even better. Madden Gamer says, you think we can get the same start we got last season and do it this season? I think we're not in the same situation that we were last year. We're in a better situation. Last year we started 1-4, then went 10-6 for the rest of the way, only losing 2 games for the rest of the year. I think we're in a better situation than we are right now, Madden Gamer. And the whole thing that the schedule is way tougher and all that other stuff. Do you know how many times we were picked to lose some of those games down the stretch? First of all, the Cardinals. I'm talking about looking from as of right now where we were this past season. When you look at our schedule, the last few games, it was brutal because of how those teams performed last year. People cannot predict the schedule, and people cannot predict the NFL. It's impossible. The schedule could be easier than we think it is by the time we hit December. You don't know who's going to be bad and who's going to be good. It's too early to tell. I mean, obviously, you look at some of these 0-4 teams, you're like, okay, that's going to be hard to come out of. But you just can't tell. Nobody could have predicted the Giants going 0-4. I didn't think they were going to be that great because their offensive line is terrible. You can't win in this league if you have a bad offensive line, but it is what it is. It's early, guys. Stop hitting the panic button. I am SkyX83, and I'll see you guys in the next one.